We've got breaking news, ladies and gentlemen, as the Chicago Bulls have gone out and signed Norman Powell to a 2-year, $45 million deal. We got to talk about what this means for the team moving forward and why this is a perfect first big splash move for Bryson Graham. All that and more in today's episode of the Windy City Breeze Sports Talk Daily. Let's go. Now, if you are new to the channel, please hit that like button. Please subscribe to the page. We do talk Chicago sports daily on this channel. Only channel talk Chicago sports, how Chicago talk. So make sure that you stay in tune with us, man. So this coming out probably about 10, 15 minutes ago as we were live on Locked On Bulls, which first time we've ever caught the breaking news live on Locked On Bulls. But per Shams Charania, just in, free agent Norman Powell has agreed to a 2-year, $45 million deal with the Chicago Bulls. Sources tell ESPN Powell joins the Bulls as a point scorer after an NBA All-Star season in Miami, averaging nearly 22 points over the last 2 years. He said Bulls executives finalized Powell's deal with Jason Glushin, oh, that's a name, and Khalid McCaskill this morning. So listen, here's the bottom line of this. We talked about Norman Powell yesterday, what he could mean to this Chicago Bulls team, what he could mean for this team moving forward, right? Like, you feel like you have a player who is somebody that you can now count on to be the offense for your team moving forward. You feel like you now have a player who, and you look at, you know, what he was able to do in previous years, right? Like 21.7 points per game, 3.5 rebounds per game last season, 2.5 assists per game, 47% from the field, and did all of that while shooting it 38% from the three-point line. Like, those are numbers that you feel like you have someone who you can count on to go out there and be offense for you. And I know people have described him as a shot chucker. Listen, I think he was in a system where it dictated him going out there and tossing shots up at a rate that maybe was a little more than you would like to see. It was him and Bam Adebayo for the offense entirely. So I don't think that this is a bad thing that the Bulls went out and added this. In fact, I think it offsets perfectly everything that you wanted to see from your young players coming up this season, right? If you are the Chicago Bulls right now and you want to see Caleb Wilson develop, Matas Buzelis develop, you want to see Dalen Swain and what he can become, this is the perfect kind of name for you. This is the name, the style of name that I think puts you in a position to go out there and let them just run, let them just play, let them play their game and start to understand the NBA while still having some of that mentorship on the back end. I think that's the other part about this that I'm always really excited about. If I'm going to have a player like Norman Powell in the building, if I'm going to spend big money, I mean, you're spending 22.5, so essentially the rest of your cap space on Norman Powell. If I'm going to be doing that, do I want to do that in a way that, or do I want to spend that kind of money on a player who is just points per game out there? Do I want to spend that kind of money on a player who can also be a mentor for this team? And I think that's something that when you talk about Norman Powell coming in, right, not to say that he's looking to be a mentor, but at this point in his career, 33 years old, you've got him for a couple of years here. You've got a player in the building who it truly does feel like can preach exactly what Dalen Swain needs to hear. Can come in and show Caleb Wilson and those guys, hey, this is how you move as a pro. And the biggest thing for me is with Dalen Swain, you know, he probably looks at his game and says, well, why can't I be a starter? Why can't I be on the floor right away? Why am I sitting on the bench? Why am I the one coming off of the bench? That's been Norman Powell for most of his career. Most people didn't know Norman Powell was this good at basketball when they went out and they made moves for him. So, or when they went out and watched Norman Powell, right? And then you saw Norman Powell get himself into the starting lineup, and all of a sudden it was like, yo, Norman Powell's kind of a really good scorer. Yo, Norman Powell might be an all-star caliber player, right? And I think the part that I love about this the most is I pay more for that than I am for you to go out there and be the number one scorer on this team. I hope that Norman Powell isn't the number one scorer on the Chicago Bulls. And I get, right, like you want to see that elite production, but the reality of it is I want to see Matas be the best player on the team. I want to see Caleb Wilson be the best player on the team. Heck, I want to see Josh Giddey be the best player on the team. And Norman Powell is a piece that I think helps them to get there. I don't look at Norman Powell as a piece that you have to have. I don't look at Norman Powell as a piece that you that has to be great for this team over the next couple of years. I think what he has to do is help these young guys become the players that they are eventually going to be, and that is enough for me. And space the floor a little bit, right? The floor spacing, of course, is the reason that you go out and pick him up. And he's not a slouch defensively. He can get the job done defensively, but definitely more of a team defense than it is a Norman Powell one-on-one kind of defense. Let me know how you guys feel in the comments as well on this. Is this something that you like the signing on? Is this something that you feel, maybe the Bulls wasted a little bit of money here? Why would you go out and get a Norman Powell? Why not just roll with what you have here and go out and get, I think Duncan Robinson was just bought out, so or is expected to be bought out, I should say. And so, could you have gone and just got a shooter in that sense? We'll see. We'll see what ends up happening. Shout out to you guys in the comments. Chicago Bulls Nation 2 said, great signing, especially for the price and length. I'm surprised his agent was okay with 2 years, knowing he's already 33. Well, listen, when you get to, you're playing your last 2 years probably on the biggest money that you were going to get in the market. Again, I talked about Norman Powell, right? Most people are probably viewing him as an expiring player, right? Somebody who's going to be heading the other direction. Why would you sign a player like that to a contract? Well, he makes sense for the Bulls, right? He makes sense if you go out there and you spend more money for that mentorship that you're going to get, for the ability to score that he still brings to the floor, but also, right, like the ability for him to be a veteran presence on this team. He makes sense in that regard. But if you're his agent, you realize, right, like this is probably your last hurrah. You don't take this deal, you aren't going to get this kind of money anywhere else. And again, Norman Powell has done everything in his career to this point, right? He's been an all-star. He's been somebody who has been a big part of a championship caliber team. He has had deep playoff runs, right? So he's probably looking at this and saying, listen, I'm trying to get the bag and I'm trying to be in a good environment. I hope that he feels that the Chicago Bulls is a good environment here. Gucci Finesse in the building said, why would they do this? LOL. I would rather have Io. Well, the reality is Io wasn't coming back, right? The reality is you were never getting Io. This is a completely different regime, so we can't look at them for moving on from Io. I would bet you that Bryson Graham probably would have kept Io if he was still on the team at the end of this season. Is that a final miss by AK? Sure. Right? Is that something we can hate about him for the rest of our lives? Sure, 100%. But the reality is that this is the right kind of player for the team that you have. Again, is it a splash move? Is it a sexy move? Is it a, oh my God, I can't believe that you got this guy? Well, I wouldn't say that, right? But what it is to me is it's the right move that provides just enough scoring for this kind of team. That to me, and there's no one else that you're focusing on. There's nobody else that you are focusing on. It's all about Caleb Wilson. It's all about Dalen Swain. It's all about Modest Buzelis moving forward. Like, I think this is a really, really good move for this Bulls team. I think for a young Bulls team, what you're looking at right now, you're seeing Bryson Graham push all his chips on the kids. That's something I wish AK would have done. That's the one thing that I wish at a certain point, right? Like even early on, listen, whatever we think about Patrick Williams, right? He kind of gets screwed over. Now, you still got to find your way. You still got to go out there and hustle. You still got to be active. Like you can't be thrown off and your entire career is thrown off because of it. But when P. Will shows up and he looks around and he's like, well, I'm the number 4 overall pick, baby. I'm going to get this opportunity to go out here and show who I am. And you go, actually, we got DeMar DeRozan, who's going to play your position. So now you're a power forward. And also, we've got Zach LaVine, who's going to play the 2. And also, we're going to go out and get Alonzo Ball. We've also got Vooch on this team as well. So you just kind of get in where you fit in. I hated that. It was the one thing where it was like, yeah, it's cool that we have a competitive team now, but for kids developing, that's not a good move. I like the fact that Bryson Graham is out here making deals that is all about these young players developing. Hey, if you haven't done so, man, hit that like button, subscribe to the page, man. 169 in the building, 13 likes on the video. That is crazy. Let's get this thing up over 100 likes. Austin says, what should we expect as Bulls fans for the upcoming season with the current roster construction? Basically, where does this roster stack up with the rest of the teams in the Eastern Conference? I just said this on Locked On Bulls. And I will continue to say it here. Don't expect good things. I should have said it. Don't expect good things right away. Don't expect the playoffs right away. This is going to take some time to build. You have to think the first 15 to 20 games you are having this conversation. Norman Powell has never been in Tiago Splitter's system before. It's going to take a few games. It's probably going to take about 15 games for him to figure out, okay, this is where I'm supposed to be. This is how I'm supposed to move. Josh Giddey has not played with 3 of the players that you have added to this team. The only one that he has a relationship with is Modest Buzelis. That will help you only so far early on. Modest is going to be vying to try and be the man early on. Caleb Wilson is going to be vying to try and be rookie of the year and the man early on. You're going to have to figure out that dynamic and set up, which every team has to do. Who's the number 1, who's the number 2, and who's going to be the focal point of this thing moving forward. You're going to have to figure that process out. Caleb Wilson and Dalen Swain are going to be figuring out the NBA. The game is going to be moving faster than anything that they've ever been a part of, and it's going to take a second for it to slow down and for them to find their spots and pick their spots and be able to find their game on a consistent basis. This is not new. Some of the best players in the world have had this happen to them early on in their career. My point in all that being, the first 15 to 25 games, don't be surprised if you're looking at the Chicago Bulls as a 10-15 team, right? Where you're going, oh man, like they're trying to tread water, but realistically they're not very good. And then after that, as they start to hit their groove, maybe they find their way back in. But by then, right, you're already a quarter of the way through the season. You're probably landing around 35-ish wins at that point. If you have a really good rest of the season, that's not a playoff team, right? That's somebody, maybe you're in the play-in if the bottom of the barrel is squalor. But you got to think about, a lot has happened in this Eastern Conference. Kawhi Leonard back in the Eastern Conference. So where does that put the Raptors now? Who's going to fall from I think they're at least in the top 6. Who's going to fall from that top 6 and be a play-in team, right? There's a lot to talk about. I think on what everything else is in the Eastern Conference as well. Is Jaylen Brown going to go to an Eastern Conference team, or does he remain with the Celtics? If he does remain with the Celtics, what is that Celtics team going to look like coming into this season, right? I don't expect the Bulls to be in the playoffs. I don't go into this season expecting the Bulls to be in the playoffs. I expect development. I expect these young guys to come out here and learn the game and be able to figure the game out. And I expect these coaches to put them in a position to where they can be successful, because you have put Caleb Wilson into rookie of the year territory, right? Or Modest Buzelis has taken that step from being a 16 point per game scorer to a 20 to 22 point per game score on a consistent basis. That's what I care about with this Chicago Bulls team moving forward. That's what I want to see these young guys be able to go out there and prove. Everything else is it's fine, right? Everything else, it is what it is. You hope that Norman Powell hits to justify paying him $22 million. You hope that Zach Collins is healthy. You hope that Josh Giddey continues to play at the clip that he does. But there's only a couple of guys that really this season matters around, and it is Caleb Wilson, it is Dalen Swain, it is Modest Buzelis. Shout out to y'all in the comments, man. Again, if y'all haven't done so, hit that like button, subscribe to the page. Kid Flash says, I don't mind the move. I just don't want Powell to take shots away from younger guys. Well, I don't think he's going to be, listen, every role within an offense is different, right? And the reality is Norman Powell has played the other guy role most of his career. Like, Norman Powell is the kind of player who has come off the bench and didn't get a ton of shots a game. But even his last couple of years with the Clippers in Miami, where he was getting more shots a game, he's still getting only 15 shots a game, right? He was shooting it just about over 7 for 15, about 48% from the field. There's only 15 shots a game. There's still plenty of shots for Modest. There's still plenty of shots for Wilson. The other thing is, too, they're not taking the same kind of shots, right? You finally got a player that is different from everyone else here. He's not taking the same shots as Modest. He's not taking the same shots as Caleb Wilson. So, to me, I think the shots that he is getting, especially when you talk about 7 of those shots coming from the three-point line for Norman Powell, that opens things up for the kind of shots that we're expecting Caleb Wilson and Modest to have to go out there and take. J-Rock says the Bulls will be a surprise team this season. They will be a playoff team. Listen, from your mouth to God's ears, I hope they are a playoff team. I hope that they do find a way to put themselves into that conversation. The reality is, though, you got a lot to overcome very quickly, and the odds are against them. Does that mean they can't overcome the odds? No. I think most people would say Portland wasn't going to be a playoff team last year, and they made it to a playoff series in their first year. I think that you've got the right coach in place to help you to get to that point. If Caleb Wilson paired up with the right coach, very sound familiar, it helps you to get to that point, or even Modest Buzelis paired up with the right coach helps you get to that point. But yeah, they could be a playoff team. But what you're going to need for them to be a playoff team is somebody who stands above the rest. Who's that player on this team? Is that Modest? Listen, the NBA GMs around the league have talked about, Modest Buzelis and view him as a role player moving forward. I think Modest can prove him wrong. I think he's got all the talent in the world to prove him wrong, and I think you just put the best fire behind his backside that you could of Caleb Wilson coming in here and being the number 4 overall pick, talking big, saying, I want to be the greatest player there's ever been. I want to be the guy that changes the culture of Chicago, right? Like that is the true conversation that we're having here. Can Modest grow from that pressure being put on him, or does he fall into line because Caleb Wilson is that good of a player? We'll see. And if you're going to pick anybody moving forward, I would think these two have the right mindset to roll out there and to overcome the odds. But it's going to be a lot of work to overcome those odds. What else we got up in here? Modest needs to get in the gym. I don't know. I feel like Modest has grown pretty well throughout his career. I feel like he's gone. He's probably gained muscle mass throughout his career how he's supposed to, and I would expect him to come back a little bit stronger this year. I'll tell you what, nobody's standing in his way. Nobody is standing in his way. Larry Martin said, do you think the Bulls making any more moves, big name or role players, or just bench role players? Now, listen, the reality is that the Bulls right now are, first off, most of the money is gone. What you have left is mid-level exception, basically $9.5 million that you can go out there and add a role player with. We've seen some solid role players be added to the team based off of that price point. But the reality is you're not going out there to get something great. You're probably going out there to get, I would assume, another shooter, right? To fill out that final roster spot. You know what I'm saying? So like, I look at that more when it comes to that the Bulls making any more moves. Are they going to go out and get somebody that does something specific that is really good for them? I think that's kind of the conversation we're having, more so than the Bulls going out and acquiring another splash move. Now, realistically, they could not be done if they wanted to trade away Isaac Okoro. If you wanted to trade away, if the Zach Collins contract you signed yesterday is still tradable, if somebody is interested in him, right? Could you see them bringing somebody back in that sense? Possibly. But the reality is, I would say they're probably done for the foreseeable future. Let's face it, Norman Powell is a very expensive, hopefully very effective Band-Aid. He will keep the ship from sinking. I don't even think Norman Powell's here to do that. The ship is being brought back up. The ship has sunk. Right? Like, it's not a new ship. The ship has sunk. You are trying to bring the ship back from the bottom of the ocean right now. Norman Powell's, I think that his role on this team is go out there, be effective, knock down shots, teach these young guys. And teach these young guys being the highest part on that. You've seen Bryson Graham do that. You saw Bryson Graham do this last year when he brought in CJ McCollum into Atlanta, right? And bringing back a player like that was a criticized move because it was like, CJ for Trey. I mean, of course, there was other things in there, but it was like, I don't know, is that going to be effective? CJ was a heck of a player down the stretch. CJ was a heck of a player down the stretch. And so I think the reality is that I'm not expecting too much from Norman Powell. If he comes here and he gives you 18 to 20 points a game and he's effective from the 3-point line, success on the floor. If I see Dalen Swain developing in a really nice way, here's the thing: if Dalen Swain becomes Norman Powell, A+ pick. If Dalen Swain becomes Norman Powell, A+ pick. So, if you're able to help these young players along and acclimate to the NBA a little bit quicker, maybe you're not talking about 25 games for these guys to figure it out. Maybe you are only talking about 15, and you can come back from struggling through 15 games. Struggling through 25 games, you can come back from, but it's just tough. What else do we got? Brandon Green said, I remember some moments last year when we were waiting for Modest to get big and take control of games. We ended up depending on Giddey more, I feel. Yeah. And that's why I said, right, this year is probably going to be Modest going, hey, if you're going to be the face of this team, it's your time to step up. But it's also going to be Caleb Wilson going, hey, this ain't your team. I'm the number 4 overall pick. There's a reason I'm here, because you couldn't do what you needed to do to get it done. You're going to have that contention no matter what. I look at Modest as, hey, this is your backs against the wall. What are you going to do? Is this your team or is this his team? And usually, think about, if we're talking about dogs, I think Modest is a big dog. I think Caleb Wilson comes in as a big dog. If we're talking about dogs here, the bigger dog usually gets the smaller dog to submit. If you got 2 big dogs, they may go at it, but the submit looks the same. Does Modest end up falling into line or falling into place for what's best for the team? Which, if he does, not a bad thing either. Probably means Caleb Wilson is a problem. Probably mean Caleb Wilson is going to be a massive problem in this NBA. Lavelle Jones said, about time. I was starting to get worried. C-Red Nation, stand up. Now we can at least compete for the play-in. We did this already. Honestly, I think that, it's as sad as it is, I don't want to be in the play-in again. I don't. But if I get into the play-in because the young guys are that good, I think that's a different conversation, right? When we talked about the Bulls getting in the play-in last time, it wasn't because of everybody being kids figuring it out. All the young pieces were looking good, and you force yourself to. You were still talking about veteran pieces being the focal point of that. Now you are talking about, like, as the White Sox used to have, the kids can play. Now you're having that conversation. And in having that conversation with the young guys going, if this young team makes the play-in year 1, I'd be excited. If you're heading into year 2 and you're still talking play-in, then we got a problem. If you looked at the market, when it started, there was practical stuff and clown car stuff, and we basically did the practical work. Yeah, 100%. Like, none of this is sexy, and it's not supposed to be sexy, right? Like Remington said, Norman Powell is old, play-in at best. I think y'all are relying on Norman Powell too much. I think you're expecting too much out of Norman Powell. Norman Powell's job is to come here, knock some threes down, space the floor, help the young guys learn. He answered a question. Who's going to be the three-point shooter? Norman Powell. We got an answer now. I think people are looking at Norman Powell as if he's going to come into this season and he's going to be 25 points per game and he's going to lead the team and he's going to be the guy. No, I'd be sick if Norman Powell did that. Norman Powell doesn't move the needle enough one way or the other for me to feel like, oh, this is where the Bulls are going to land. That depends on the work that the rookies and Modest Buzelis and Josh Giddey are able to do. That's what it comes down to. Baki says, I hope the Powell move pushes P. Will further down the depth chart, hopefully in training room and not to be seen during games. We'll see. You know what I mean? Like the P. Will's going to get a fair opportunity to show who he is with a new regime. And It's gonna get nasty here. This a nasty statement to make. Norman Powell helps P. Will too. If you want to talk about being able to adapt and adjust to a bench role, I think that Norman Powell also could be a good asset to Patrick Williams. Now, do I think that it's going to help P? Well, probably not. I also don't think that I have many hopes for Patrick Williams. But could Norman Powell be a name that comes in and helps Patrick Williams be useful? I was going to say solid, but solid's a high bar. Useful? Sure. Norman Powell can do that. Possibly. So, while we're all out on P. Will, I don't know if that means that the Bulls are fully out on P. Will just yet. And at a minimum, if nothing else, just to get him to a point where he looks tradable. If you get him to a point where he looks tradable, you trade him. What did Baki say? Baki said, "You're wrong, Pat. Norman Powell's job is to make sure we never see P. Will again. That's a needle mover." All caps is crazy. Bulls are out of the bottom three. Offseason completed. We'll see. We'll see. Depends on how long it takes things to hit. Brandon Green said, "Don't we already know who P. Will is? You think he gets grace from this new staff?" No, he gets the same opportunity that everybody who was previously here and is under contract is going to get. Prove to me why we should keep you around. Right? Like it's just like the Bears with Tyreek Stevenson. Right? For those of us here who are mostly Bears fans, just like the Bears with Tyreek Stevenson. Tyreek Stevenson, we feel like we kind of know what he is. We feel like we kind of know what you're getting with a player like him. There's talent there, but there's, some things that aren't too desirable when it comes to being locked in on the field. There are things that, you hope he's able to overcome. But at this point, we probably know who he is. But the coaching staff still gave him a chance to go out there and prove who he was going to be under them. They gave him a chance to start. They gave him a chance to be one of the main options on this team. I think that is what P. Will get. I think that he will get an opportunity to prove, hey, I'm more than just an end of the bench guy. Things didn't work out between me and Billy, but at the end of the day, I'm still here with the team. I think I can do this at a high clip. Will he? I don't know. That's up to P. Will. But will he have the opportunity to do it? Sure. And so we'll see what ends up happening because of that. He might end up right back on the end of the bench, or like Baki said, just stuck in the training room. But hey, man, hit that like button, subscribe to the page, leave a 5-star review. Y'all know what to do. Appreciate you guys for tuning in and showing love as always, man. We will be back with more or any breaking news that the Bulls have. I would assume that this is probably it for moves in free agency. You made a good one. You made a really, really solid move for the team that you currently have. And I think somebody said it earlier. I don't remember who said it. But a practical move, right? There was some wild stuff that's out there, and there was some practical stuff that's out there, and there was some splash stuff that you could have went and got. This is practical. This was practical for the Chicago Bulls. So we'll see what ends up happening because of that. Hit that like button, subscribe to the page. Like I said, as always, it is your boy, Pat the Designer, back at it again. Y'all stay safe out there, Chicago. Stay tapped in with us. And if you haven't hit that subscribe button, make sure to do so as well. See, Red Nation, stand up. Good move by Bryson Graham. Good offseason so far by Bryson Graham. Let's see what it turns itself into at the end of the day. Y'all stay safe out there, Chicago. See, Red Nation, stand up. Peace. Red